Welcome to the Page One Podcast, a podcast featuring a variety of guests and thought leaders on topics ranging from digital marketing, sales channel strategies, influencer marketing, best-in-class product launches, and all the details about how to accelerate sales. Now, here's your host, Luke Peters.
Thanks for joining us on the Page One Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of Newer Appliances and retail band digital strategy agency. We're now in a coronavirus world, and I know it's on everyone's mind, so I'm going to adapt all of these interviews to ensure that you, the listeners, are getting the most out of this podcast. And before we jump into the podcast, how are your digital sales performing? Do you wish you had someone to create a custom strategic plan to grow your online sales and then show you how to execute it? That's what we do at Retail Band. If you're interested, find me on LinkedIn or email me at luke@retailband.com. In this episode, you're going to learn from entrepreneur Stephen Hong on how to bootstrap and build a lasting company. Stephen's an entrepreneur and business leader with deep expertise in e-commerce, culture building, technology. He's currently the self-titled Chief Bandito at his company, Discount Bandit, an online shopping service that matches up discount shoppers to retailers. Prior to that, Stephen founded and exited the number one retailer in air treatment category, Sylvain. And in his early career, Stephen worked on digital transformation projects with Fortune 500 companies as vice president at Merrill Lynch and a manager at Accenture. Stephen is former board member of Entrepreneurs Organization, is an active member of the Young Presidents Organization and leadership in Georgia. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks, Luke. I appreciate it. Wow, that's a great intro. I appreciate the kind words.
You got it. And just for the audience, so Stephen and I know each other a long time. Back in the day, we competed a little bit, and then I kind of changed up New Era, and then we actually were selling some products through his past company, Sylvain. And I think where did we meet? I think we met at what's that entrepreneur show or what's that internet retailer, right? In Chicago. I think that's where we initially met. Either there or
yeah. Internet retailer, now Retail X, and I remember meeting you there, and it's always interesting when you're meeting someone who at the time is a competitor and you're trying to feel them out. You're trying to feel them out for, is this person a cool dude or are they just kind of like obnoxious? And you were a cool dude then, you're a cool dude now. So,
thanks for that.
You're always positive in my book. I mean, I know it's interesting I'm sure you would come across this too. There's some retailers or some companies rather that you compete against, but you have a respect for them because, we're all obviously trying to make a better mousetrap, but they do it, with integrity and they're not trying to be underhanded. And, I've always felt that you did a fantastic job in terms of what you were doing with your companies. And I've had other companies that I've gone up against who, didn't have such a positive experience with. So it was always a pleasure to talk with you.
Cool. Well, likewise. And for me, this is a big ocean here. So there's plenty of room, and I always just like meeting and learning from people. And one thing, that's good for the audience to know is when you built Sylvain, kind of what stood out is you guys were really focused on that core area, health and air treatment. And so, that's definitely, we'll get into some questions about that later on, but just so the audience understands, you've got, experience in so many different areas and a lot of digital marketing experience. So, first let's start with coronavirus. Before we get into some of these other questions, I'm sure you have a lot of experiences with Discount Bandit or even other friends that are in business. What are you seeing kind of on the ground?
Yeah, so coronavirus is just having a devastating impact, obviously, on small and mid-sized businesses of every scale. I'm a member of the Young Presidents Organization, so YPO, and they did a survey of their membership. And these are all, pretty decent sized businesses. And I think it's basically 90% of businesses were in some way negatively impacted. 50% of those businesses seriously impacted, high risk. And then a small percentage, about 9%, actually saw an increase in their volume. But the vast majority of people right now are suffering. And you're seeing that with the businesses, but also obviously that trickles down to the employees. And employees are being furloughed and laid off. And, my hearts go out to all those people.
Yeah. And it's so tough. At the same time, companies that are in digital, that are focused online are the fortunate ones. And For me, probably the same thing with you. By the way, in 2008, we never even felt it. And it was almost, you almost feel like you're cheating because so many people were in pain, but it didn't, that crisis really didn't affect us, in online businesses, just because the trend and online sales were growing. And here it's a little different. I think this one is a little deeper, but at the same time, companies that are positioned online seem to be doing well. Are you kind of seeing that with Discount Bandit? Is it still is that working in your favor, or are there still some negative impacts there?
Yeah, so Discount Bandit is interesting because it is an intermediary, right? So it matches up buyers and sellers. It matches up shoppers who are looking for an absolute fantastic deal on something they're looking to purchase, and it matches them up with retailers. So it finds a retailer that can provide them that great deal. So because of that, we have insight, and we have millions of products across, tons and tons of different categories, anything from pet food to automotive to appliances and home decor. So we see the sales across the categories and across the retailers. And, contrary to what's happening in traditional brick and mortar, obviously, with already there was a trend of it obviously on the decline, but with everything shutting down, obviously sales going to zero. All the online that we've seen, for the most part, a couple sectors, no, but for the most part, we've seen a lot of them rise. And then even more so in the past week or two, with the stimulus checks depositing into people's bank accounts, that's what we presume is what fueling it. We're seeing even a larger jump in some of that volume. And some of the retailers that we work with, they actually are trying to cut back on their volume because some of their operational things are falling apart. If you take an online retailer and all of a sudden, in one day you double their volume, it's going to create a lot of operational problems. And so some of the retailers that we work with have actually shut down their operations for a period of time in certain marketplaces and certain services because they're not able to maintain that same kind of service level because the volume surge. So, they are fortunate in that regard, where they're seeing some of the lift from the stimulus that's being injected into the economy. But as a whole, obviously, it's a devastating and negative impact.
Wow, that's so interesting you said that, because we've seen a bump as well in the last week, and I didn't really even think that it was the stimulus checks. And maybe you're right, but I kind of said, well, around March 15 to 25, let's say, it was, the world's going to come to an end. And so that was different. And then afterwards, the stimulus came in and the government pretty much said, that they're going to pretty much bail everything out. And, the market went up. And so I was assuming it was that, but you might be right. Maybe it is those checks coming in the mail. So, super interesting.
Yeah. As soon as things locked down, we saw sales of, we have so many different retailers selling so many different things that we saw sales of like toilet paper and hand sanitizers and webcams and freezers. People were stocking up on food. We saw certain things where you said, okay, it makes sense. I understand the shortages on some of these things in some stores, or people are really kind of stocking up for the long haul in their homes. You saw those sectors that kind of made sense. But then with the most recent, this last week, we took a look and it was really broad-based. So it was just kind of across all product categories. And so we're thinking, okay, well, either, we did something incredible on our website and all of a sudden customers are converting it at double the rate, which is, in our experience is pretty unlikely, and you would know if you did. So we said, well, what else is going on? So the thing that we kind of drew the conclusion on was stimulus related. And we spoke to a couple of retailers. They felt the same way. Obviously, you take in the information that you can see, and then you make your best guess as to what connects the dots.
Yeah. And I've done some Google Trends, just some Google Trends research, or we use SEMrush. So just, you can do some keyword research on that. And we have seen the trends go up, and, freezers, like you said, went way up, and then it kind of came back down, but it leveled higher than it was previous. I think like over 50% jump still is where it leveled out. And then other stuff has trended up, and a lot of it from around March 21 to say 23. So I think that's when a lot of companies, really forced to stay at home and work from home. And then it was still doom and gloom. And your assessment's interesting. Like you said, it was like, toilet paper and necessities at first, but then just overall life, people are buying more things online. So So yeah, companies that are in this area are going to benefit. I had a bunch of other questions, but now you got me curious. So Discount Bandit, you're selling a huge amount of products, it sounds like. And you started this company a couple years ago, right? 3 years ago? Is that
Yes.
Okay. How are you attracting the customers? That's always a difficult part. How do you get the customer base, to make it work for the retailers? Is that just, content marketing couldn't do it alone? Any others? I'm sure you got some secrets, but anything else you want to talk to how do you drive kind of customer growth on that site?
Sure. So in my past life, I did a lot of digital marketing. So with Sylvain, they were really good at traditional digital marketing in terms of paid ads on Google and Bing, and obviously retargeting and email marketing. And so a lot of those skills I brought with me to Discount Bandit. And so with Discount Bandit, we've been obviously utilizing a lot of those to drive shoppers to the site. One of the challenges that we have at Discount Bandit is that our margins on a given transaction, since we're just an intermediary, we're not a retailer, we're not a brand manufacturer. The margin we're making on a transaction is very, very small. And so, we don't have the ad budget to outspend a retailer or a manufacturer on a given term. So we can pay enough to basically exist and be there, whether that's paid dollars in terms of your Google ad spend, or whether it's paid dollars in terms of creating unique content to show up for that given product. We don't have the budget to really, really compete head to head. So we have the budget to just be there someplace, right? But who we're catering to is the customer who is very frugal, and they're not going to stop at page 1 of Google, right? So a large percentage of people, as you know, they're not going to go to page 2. They're not going to go to page 3. They're not going to go to the shopping tab of Google and click through pages of retailers or sellers to find us. But there are a large minority of people who will. And so that's our customer, that frugal customer, that they kind of know what they want, and they're going to go find the best price for it. And so we're out there with the best price a large percent of the time, many times beating Amazon on very popular products. And so customers will come, they'll seek us out. So we just have to have enough percent out there that they can find us. So that's traditional digital marketing. What's really interesting in this business is I'm also having to tackle sort of brand marketing. So the Sylvain days, we had built up our brand over a long period of time by just having that great content out there and becoming a knowledge resource for air treatment. With Discount Bandit, we're really trying to become a destination where customers come and start shopping with us. When they say, hey, I want to buy this kind of expensive. Let me see if I can find a great price on it. And they start with us. So we're trying to create really a brand presence around that and create a loyal following. And so that's a whole nother area of marketing, which I call myself a novice at, but I find fascinating, and I'm excited to be learning.
Yeah, well, and a couple of other things that are kind of inside of there, for the audience that's listening. I mean, with Sylvain, you had some inventory carry, right? I mean, you guys were carrying inventory. It wasn't all drop ship, so you had to have a warehouse, I think, and some inventory. Is that part correct?
Yeah, kind of the 80-20 rule. Actually, the majority of what we would sell on a day-to-day basis would come out of our inventory. But yeah, we had a large dropship catalog as well. That kind of the long tail just sold less frequently.
Yeah. So on this business, you don't have to carry inventory. So that part's nice, so your kind of capital structure is a little, your balance sheet is, doesn't have that component to it. But also, like you said, the margins are tighter, but at the same time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get a better lifetime value because you're going to get more repeat business with this model. So your customer acquisition cost, you can play that out over a few visits, I guess, if you want to. If you're able to hold on to the customer long enough, because they'll come back and buy other things, and so it's I guess it's just a different marketing math equation, right? With Discount Bandit.
It is. The category that I had been in prior in air treatment, it does have a repeat purchase rate, but it's not that magical. Hey, I got a 50% repeat purchase rate where you have these diehard loyal customers. Where I think that the category that Discount Bandit is playing in can have that really high, I don't know, percent, but can have that high repeat purchase percentage. And that's why building a brand and building that just diehard fan base is really important. And so you're right. We can afford to not make money on that first transaction. We can afford to lose money on that first transaction. It's interesting. I was talking with a retailer just this past week, and they're in the home decor space. And I was saying, hey, look, we're obviously out there. We're very price conscious. We use crawling of all the prices on Google, and so we understand where all the retailers are priced. And so we're saying, your prices are pretty aggressive on a regular basis, And so we're talking with them, and their model was interesting. Their model was basically, we target to make nothing on every first sale.
Wow.
And once we get that first sale, we do try to upsell them. So if we can upsell them on some additional things that can come with this particular type of product, then we'll make some money on that first sale. But even if we don't, we hope to just bring them in as a long-time customer. So, it's a different model.
Yeah, definitely. That is super interesting. So before we get to some other questions, why don't you give us a little bit of an idea just for the audience so they can understand just kind of the scale of Sylvain and Discount Bandit? Yeah.
So I've actually been gone, obviously, from Sylvain for a period of time now. But if I was to estimate, roughly where their sales would be now, it's probably 50 million, something along those lines. So it's a good size internet retail, the number one in its category.
Yep.
And then Discount Bandit. So we're gross merchandise value because we're a service. We're obviously, not only are we private, but we're very, very closely held and in an early phases. So we're keeping a lot of information private. However, we are north of that number in terms of overall transaction volume.
That's awesome. And congratulations. So hard to do a second business, and because when you have that one business, and sometimes entrepreneurs take it for granted and they jump into another one thinking it's going to be that easy, but it isn't. And so, good on you for being able to replicate that. It's really not easy. And I think, actually, why don't we kind of use that as the next step here and just talk about your thoughts on creating a business that does last.
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke. So creating a business that lasts, it's a question that we had to ask ourselves, both at the early days of Sylvain and question that I'm continuing to ask myself now with Discount Bandit. I'd say that it really comes down to three things. I'd say creating value, right? That's a clear one, creating value.
Yep.
Culture, and I'd say technology, competency, and focus. So, if you just look at the first one, creating value, I remember, you and I have been at this for a while. I remember I was speaking with a retailer back in 2002, maybe. And he ran an online toy store. And I said, hey, well, online toys, are you selling something that's like unique and differentiated? He said, no, you can find my stuff at like Walmart. And I said, okay, well, are you faster than them? Are you faster than Amazon selling the toys? Are you providing better information? He's like, no. And I said, well, how are you, making money?
That's funny.
He said, well, I'm making money. And I said, well, that's great. No joke. I spoke to him about a year later. Yes, he was pretty much closing shop, and they no longer exist as an entity.
Yep.
And so, what that tells me is that, you may be able to make money for a short period of time. If you go to marketing things, everyone wants to teach you like some little marketing kind of gimmick. It's like, okay, no, it's not the little gimmicks. Yeah, you need to know all your marketing strategies. You need to know your marketing tactics. You have to be good. You have to be excellent at that, right? But on top of that, you have to have a good product, right? So if you have a bad product to start with and you're not creating value, marketing can get you so far, but it's not going to keep you going. So you got to create some kind of value out there. Sylvain, back in the early days, against Amazon was not even close to, it was probably 1/100th the size of what it is today. But we saw where it was going, and everyone knew where it was going. And so we said, okay, well, how are we going to live in this world? And so we said, okay, look, we sell a product that is commoditized. So how are we competing against Amazon? We said, you know what? We are just going to be the expert. We're going to kill the niche. We're going to know everything about it. We're going to consult with our customers when they buy, and that's going to be our differentiator. And so we started charging in that way, creating value around retail of a commodity product. And so I think that's critical to be able to see that. For Discount Bandit, we said, okay, what's our value? And the value proposition for Discount Bandit is really easy. It's basically we're going to save the shoppers money. So if you're a consumer, if you're saving cash, it's a pretty clear value proposition. Because we're an intermediary, we also have to provide a value to the other party, the supplier. So whether that be a manufacturer or a retailer, they can go ahead and price segment the market. There's so much opportunity out there for them to, obviously they know determining what price you're going to sell a product at, it's so hard, right? You have to understand how your product stacks up against your competition, what kind of value, et cetera. But you know that if you were to price it a little bit lower, there's a segment of populace there that are only going to buy at that lower price point on the demand curve, right? So imagine if you could capture not only your regular price point that you decide is optimal, but also capture that lower price point without cannibalizing all your other sales. And so that's sort of the value proposition that we're providing there to mostly retailers and a handful of manufacturers.
Yeah, and I think it's brilliant. I mean, think about, and you know this well, but Amazon isn't the cheapest. And one of the reasons they're not the cheapest is because they're expensive to sell on. So, the retailer, the brand is having to pay a lot of money for advertising and having to pay a bunch of other fees. And I mean, they have to make a profit. So, that's going to eventually work its way into the price, just like a tariff would work its way into the price. And so if your fees are lower, then they definitely would be able to kind of offer a better price than Amazon. And so, yeah, that's a great description. And with Sylvain, I mean, you guys were really great with content. You guys produce beautiful content, but, content doesn't always convert. I mean, we get tons of traffic with our content and some of it doesn't convert. Stephen, was there like a formula? Did you guys get even into the nitty gritty of when you researched what to write about that those keywords had to have purchase intent instead of just research intent? Or was there anything special that you did on the content marketing, that you felt, added more value because it eventually did create kind of that value prop there?
Yeah, it's definitely, when you spend $1 on Google Ads, and if you're measuring the ROI, you can calculate what the return is on that dollar spent, right? $1 spent on content is definitely a lot more of a fuzzy equation to figure out what the return is on that. But that was going to be our differentiator, right? That was our long-term play. And, who's it? Seth Godin says, if you're going to do sort of digital performance marketing, measure everything, right? And he says, if you're going to do brand marketing, don't measure.
That's funny. That is funny.
So I'm not sure I went to so far as to not measure, but I would say that it definitely wasn't as like, look, we're spending $1 on content. What's our return? What's our return? Because it's a lot longer. But what it's proven out, what it proved out at the time, is it proved out that it really, it paid off in terms of long-term brand recognition for Sylvain, and then also a lot of respect from the manufacturers. So the manufacturers saw how we were positioned, saw that we were educating consumers, and then they really began to partner with Sylvain on a lot of projects, which also proved very lucrative as well. So it proved out long-term, but you're right. The first year or two, you're asking yourself, okay, well, we're spending a lot of money here. Is there a return?
Yeah. It's expensive to write good content and have good writers, and the volume is never what we want, and it's tough. So that is a great way to kind of talk about it. If you're going to do performance marketing, measure it, but if you're going to do brand marketing, don't. Seth Godin's always a smart guy to listen to.
Yeah. So for Discount Bandit, it's a little bit trickier because again, we can't. With millions of products, we cannot be the knowledge experts on the products. We actually have a picture of we have a little raccoon who is our, illustrated mascot. And we have him kind of on the phone snoring and saying, look, we know absolutely nothing about the product. So it's kind of funny. It's the exact opposite of Sylvain's value proposition was. And so in this particular model, our brand sort of presence is really just around getting customers fantastic deals and building up that loyalty. But again, it is a brand play. It's just a slightly different way of approaching it.
Yeah, you just need them to tell their friends, and you'll grow the audience that way. But that'll happen after if the deals are repeat themselves, and then you'll gain that brand loyalty, and you'll of course all this stuff. You'll grow that list, and then you'll have scale, and then that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're working your way towards that. Hey, Stephen, so you ran Sylvain and grew it for over 10 years before the exit, and obviously a strong name in the category. What was your biggest thing that you learned out of that?
The biggest thing I learned from growing Sylvain and then going from there, I'd say that so those value drivers I talked about, obviously, which is creating value, culture. Culture was huge. Culture, I think, was one of it's definite underpinnings of its success. So the retention rate that Discount Bandit has, the retention rate that Sylvain had, just fantastic. We'd have employees stay around pretty much forever, and if they left, which sometimes employees do leave, there's a better offer, the grass is greener. A large percentage of them came back, and we're welcomed back with open arms. And so I think that culture is really one of the few sort of sustainable competitive advantages that a company can have. And I think that getting that right in terms of not only employee retention, but innovation and the values that you hold and getting people to be dedicated when they're at the workplace. I think that was huge. I can kind of go more into that if you want.
Yeah, we'll talk about just in tangible terms. What was maybe something that made the culture special, or something you implemented, maybe process driven, that always happened, that other listeners or CEOs listening could think about implementing in their companies?
Yeah, you read about all culture books and they say, okay, everybody come up with your company values. You come up with these company values, but these are company values that you really, truly have to hold. It's not just ones that you think sound good. I remember I used to work at Merrill Lynch a long time ago, and on the wall when you'd walk in, it had this big placard that said respect. And then I'd go upstairs and be talking with folks, and not necessarily felt that level of respect in the hallways.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that really, truly holding those values. What we did is not only did we say, hey, look, when we were trying to become clear on those, it's not only what values do we want, what values do we actually hold? Asking ourselves, amongst your management team, amongst the people, what do you guys think we stand for, right? Codifying those, making them really clear in every single review with employees, evaluating them based upon those values. When you have your management team, strategy meetings, actually go through, here are company values. Do you guys still think we're holding to these? And have we violated these? And how we violated these, and having an open discussion around that to make sure the company truly is walking the walk. And so I would say that's obviously important. And it's not, respect is a big one, obviously, that I've always had in every company that I've worked with. And it comes kind of down to just don't be a dick.
Was that one of your core values that you put on the wall?
Yeah, we didn't put it on the wall, but
yeah.
Culture comes from the top down.
Yeah.
And so if you truly in your heart value your employees, then that's going to come across, right? And that's going to influence the culture all throughout. And that's going to create that respect. People say oh, well, hey, look, you're a cool company, Discount Bandit. Look, you've got a pool table and you've got a beer fridge. Wow, you must have a great culture. And it's no, that's not, what it is you really want your employees to be happy. And then maybe you end up buying this stuff because you want them to be happy, but that stuff doesn't create the culture. What creates the culture is just caring. It's just, really taking them to heart. I think what makes it difficult, though, and I'm sure you have to do this too, is I hate firing people, right? So
yep. It's never
my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Never fun. Least favorite thing in entrepreneurship is laying people off, terminating people, because I really do care for these people. But that doesn't mean that they're the right fit for the company. And it doesn't mean that their happiness is going to be at this place, right? So it's the other side of that coin. But I think if you've got a great culture, I think your retention is going to be up. It's going to encourage dedication from the team. At Merrill Lynch, no joke, the head of the department would go on vacation to someplace for 3 weeks, and the entire department would shut down. Everybody would go on 2-hour lunches and play ping pong and play foosball.
Yeah.
Because they didn't care. Exactly. And so having that culture is huge. Innovation, culture, obviously culture can foster that or kill it. And in the space that you and I have operated in the past and that we operate in today, things are changing like every single day. And so you've got to be on top of that. You've got to be innovating. If you look at, the icebox makers of yesterday, none of them became refrigerator makers. Or the floppy disk makers of yesterday, none of them became hard drive manufacturers. Or look at automotive today. Everybody's playing catch up with Tesla. So, you got to be constantly innovating. And that comes from a focus on technology as a company, as a strategic initiative, but also culture-wise, you got to encourage failure. You got to encourage, people are going to make mistakes, and people have made, I've had really awful mistakes where, someone says, look, we just lost whatever thousands of dollars. And it's like, okay, well, how did that happen? Okay, well, what can we learn from that? And it's okay, well, look, let's move on. Because if you just beat people up over those losses, then the next time they're not going to take that risk. They're not going to put themselves out there. They're going to just play safe. And playing safe is not going to get you anywhere. Right?
No, when you're growing a company, you need the people you can't make every decision. So you have to have your team, and they have to have confidence to make those decisions. And I think your point on culture was a key one. I mean, that it's interesting because I just interviewed author Shannon Susko, and you got to check out this book though, Stephen. You'd like it. It's called A 3-Hag Way, HAG. So 3-Hag Way, and she's got a pretty cool story in how she builds companies, and she gave similar answer to you. I said, what's the most important thing that you teach people? And she said, well, it all starts with culture. So I think that's it's a really cool way of how you laid out kind of the things that you did. And I totally agree. It's, it's more about showing up every day than, buying these things. And, having events is fun, going to events is fun, but that's not enough. And I think you kind of laid out some good tangible things that people could kind of hold on to there. So I want to thank you again for joining me on this episode of the Page One podcast. Before I let you go, how can listeners get a hold of you? How can they contact you? What if they want to learn more about Discount Bandit?
Yeah, so definitely if you're in the market to buy something as a shopper, go to discountbandit.com, place an order there. You'll find that we have just fantastic deals. If we have a little badge that says steal on a product, that means we basically crawled the internet. We believe we got literally the best price that's out there. If you're a supplier, a retailer, a manufacturer, they're looking to basically price segment the market to generate additional revenues. You just go there. We have reach out to us, contact us, join our network page, fill out your details there, and some of our sales folks will give you a call and have a discussion.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. It was good catching up with you, Stephen. And I hope you enjoyed being here. I really enjoyed having you. And I also want to just thank everybody listening to this episode of the Page One podcast, sponsored by Retail Band. Hope you enjoyed the interview today. Really appreciate everyone's reviews on iTunes, and hope you join us for the next interview.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Page One podcast with Luke Peters. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us out by leaving us a rating on iTunes. Want to double your online sales? Check out www.retailband.com. And don't forget to join us next week with our next amazing guest.